This story begins with a boy named Jin Mori who was left behind by his grandfather. Memories of his grandfather often appear in his dreams, where he promised to live independently and enjoy his school days. When he wakes up, he sees his watch looks broken. Panicking about being late, Mori immediately rushes to the tournament location. Meanwhile, a man who is also a tournament participant is finishing his part-time job. After saying goodbye to his boss, he also heads to the tournament. Elsewhere, a female participant asks members of Esco Karate for directions to the arena. However, her attention is diverted by their bulging muscles. On his way, Mori, who is on his bike, accidentally sees a purse snatching. Feeling sorry for the elderly victim, he immediately chases the snatcher. During the chase, the snatcher heads onto the sidewalk and accidentally bumps into a woman with glasses named Yumira. Mori then crashes into her from behind. Annoyed that her glasses are broken, Mira throws her wooden sword at Mori, hitting his bike's wheel. After explaining that he was chasing a thief, they finally work together to catch the snatcher. The snatcher is quite agile in dodging Mira's wooden sword attacks. However, Mori and Mira refuse to give up. Feeling cornered, the snatcher spatters the stolen money to make Mori stop chasing him. Mira leaps and tries to strike him, but instead hits a street sign, banging her face. Unexpectedly, the part-time worker from earlier named Han Dewi appears and strikes the snatcher right on his helmet. The snatcher is thrown several meters and falls tragically. Thanks to Han Dewi, the purse snatching is stopped. The God of High School Tournament is the largest national martial arts competition in South Korea. Its goal is to select the 3 best high school students from across the country to represent Korea on the world stage. The winner will have their wish granted by the sponsors. After the snatching incident, Mori, Mira, and Dewi introduce themselves. The announcer then asks them to proceed to the arena. The host explains that the participants are martial arts experts invited directly by the tournament organizers. Victory is determined by knocking the opponent out or forcing them to surrender. Currently, regional preliminaries are being held in various places to determine the participants who will advance to fight for a full month. Each participant is fitted with a bracelet that monitors their vital conditions. Additionally, nanomachines are injected into the participants' bodies to speed up the healing process. Without further ado, the host starts the match. At first, participants and spectators are confused, but the atmosphere quickly heats up as participants begin to attack those considered weak first. The fighting spirit ignites, and the strong fighters begin to dominate the arena. Mori, seen as weak, becomes a target for many. However, with a series of kicks, he manages to defeat his attackers one by one. The last participant appears. He is a criminal named Kang Mansek who was allowed to participate under special conditions. Although his strength is lower than other participants, his speed is extraordinary, taking down many. His fighting style and crude remarks enrage Mira. Mira is strong, but Mansek has high endurance against her attacks. Unexpectedly, Mori pantses Mansek and mocks his cute print underwear. The enraged Mansek immediately kicks him. Mori tries to block the attack, but his hand slips and he's hit by the deadly kick. Strangely, Mansek's ankle is injured. In a split second, it turns out Mori had twisted his ankle while taking the kick. The fight between them intensifies. Elsewhere, a black-haired man named Park Moo-jin is seen finishing off high-ranking officials from other countries. The surviving officials assume he possesses Chariok, a supernatural power derived from a contract between humans and gods. Not long after, an alarm sounds, signaling an intruder, and that figure turns out to be Park Moo-jin himself. After the match, Mira coincidentally heads home in the same direction as Mori and Dewi. Because their homes are along the same route, Mori glares at Mira, remembering the match was halted because Mira got angry when her sword was taken. With her poor eyesight, she couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. Fortunately, Mori recovered thanks to the nanomachines, despite suffering a neck fracture. Dewi wonders if his friend could also be cured using nanomachines. He desperately needs money for his friend's medical bills. One day, Mori, curious about Mira's precious sword, accidentally drops it into the river. Mira immediately throws Mori hard. The sword, it turns out, was a memento from her father, a symbol of hope that Mira would find a strong heir capable of continuing the Moonlight Sword-style dojo. Mira even sacrificed her youth to train until her hands were covered in calluses. Feeling guilty, Mori comes with a flashlight to help search for the sword. Mira then apologizes for throwing him, and Mori understands her feelings. Soon, Dewi arrives with a spotlight he borrowed from his boss to help their search. The next day, the official preliminary tournament begins. Participants who survive to the end will represent their region at the national level. Yumira, Jin Mori, and Han Dewi all win their first-round matches. The next match is between Kang Monsek and Go Gamdo, a Tai Chi expert. At the start of the match, Kang Monsek is beaten out of the ring. When he returns, he receives a heavy kick, but manages to block an attack after untying his hands. The tide of the battle turns. Now, Gamdo is beaten mercilessly by Monsek. Cruelly, Monsek kicks him in the face and chokes him. Gamdo tries to fight back with the yin and yang technique, but Monsek easily counters the attack using only his feet. Monsek insults Gamdo, calling him unworthy of the martial artist title, then slaps him repeatedly. Gamdo refuses to surrender or beg for mercy from someone like him. In a fit of rage, Monsek breaks his arm and nearly kills him. Suddenly, a taekwondo kick hits Monsek and knocks him down. It's Jin Mori, who dislikes Monsek's fighting style, or rather, any martial arts style created for survival in wartime. The commissioners try to stop Mori as his action is a serious violation, but Monsek, provoked, refuses to be underestimated and launches another attack. They trade kicks. Mori speeds up his movements and lands 3 consecutive kicks with incredible speed, knocking Monsek unconscious. Suddenly, Mori's body is forced down by an intense gravitational pressure. The source of that power is Park Moojin, the head organizer of this tournament. Moojin states that Mori will receive punishment for his severe violation. Nevertheless, the tournament for the day continues as planned. After winning the first round, it's Yumira's turn to fight against Mi Person. Mi Person attacks aggressively. Meanwhile, Mira swings her wooden sword repeatedly. Mi Person uses a penetration step, then leaps onto the ring post and throws her body at Mira. As an American wrestling champion, Mi Person easily leads the match. She came all the way from America to join this tournament because the winner's wish will be granted. Mi Person herself has an odd wish, to create a harem of handsome men. It doesn't take long for Mi Person to use the ring ropes to bounce her body toward the center of the arena and launch a new attack. Mira tries to use her Moonlight Sword-style technique, but Mi Person's body feels as hard as steel. Mi Person unleashes her special technique and manages to knock Mira down so both her shoulders touch the floor. Mira's wooden sword is knocked from her grasp. Even so, Mira manages to get back up. The fight continues fiercely, and even without her sword, Mira manages to injure Mi Person. Her final attack knocks Mi Person unconscious, and Mira emerges as the winner. Elsewhere, Jin Mori is still detained in the commissioner's room. The commissioners are holding a meeting to determine his punishment. Park Moojin looks at Mori's file and is shocked to learn he is the grandson of Jin Taijin. Moojin finally decides that Mori's punishment will be to fight a commissioner of his choice. If Mori wins, he will not be disqualified. Before the match, Moojin gives Mori some fruit to get his body in fighting shape. However, Commissioner P realizes the fruit is a sacred fruit which even the elders are not allowed to eat because its power is too great. No one knows what will happen if an ordinary human eats it. After Mori eats the peach-like fruit, he feels intense chest pain, vomits blood, and finally faints. The next day, the preliminaries resume. Now it's Han Dawi's turn against Beck's Singchal. Singchal has studied Dawi's fighting style from a book he carries. It even details how to defeat him. Dawi is immediately hit by Singchal's staff. Able to read his opponent's moves, Singchal is always one step ahead, overwhelming Dawi. He strikes Dawi 12 consecutive times times, injuring his muscles, bones, and even his internal organs. However, Dawi remembers why he joined the tournament: to save his friend named Wu Xingtai. With strong determination, he activates the Four Guardian Gods technique. Starting with the Black Tortoise, he manages to stop the opponent's attack and disarm him. In his second stance, Dawi makes Sengcha lose his balance, and in the third stance, he completely shatters his defense and wins the match. Meanwhile, Mori is still unconscious with dried blood all over his body. In his dream, he feels surrounded by many people and strange creatures. As the fight between Mori and Commissioner Q begins, Mori hasn't appeared. Hearing the crowd's cheers makes Park Mujin smile. However, Mori finally arrives, albeit a little late. The host explains the rules. Mori only needs to knock Commissioner Q down once to win. As soon as the match starts, Commissioner Q cannot keep up with Mori's speed. In just 7 seconds, Mori manages to knock him down. This leaves the audience disappointed, as the fight felt like child's play. Suddenly, Mori's body feels hot and uncontrollable. Meanwhile, the enraged Commissioner Q finally unleashes his Charyeok, a clown figure carrying a death scythe. The power overwhelms Mori and nearly kills him, but another commissioner immediately steps in to stop Q. The fight is declared over and Mori is announced the winner. Seeing this, Park Mujin becomes even more convinced that Jin Mori is the grandson of the tiger Jin Taijin. This weekend, Dawi and Mira will face each other in the arena. As usual, the three of them walk home together. However, suddenly, someone comes to propose to Mira. With gentle words, the man claims he was fated to meet her. The man is Oh Songjin, a martial artist who claims to be the strongest and coolest fighter. The next day, Songjin comes again with flowers. He praises Mira as a strong, beautiful woman with unlimited potential. Songjin also promises to make the moonlight sword style famous throughout the world. Feeling her dream could be realized through Songjin, Mira accepts the proposal. Since childhood, Mira lost her father and was raised by her uncle. She also inherited the family dojo. However, her uncle is too weak and lacks experience in swordsmanship. As a result, the students lost faith. Mira's uncle actually disapproves of the marriage, especially since Mira is still in school. But Songjin continues to use sweet words and praise Mira's abilities. He even claims to have a grand plan to make the moonlight sword style the best in the world. The news of the engagement troubles Mori. He goes to Mira's house and asks if she is serious about getting married and canceling her semi-final match, but Mira kicks him out. Mori then asks Daewoo for help, but Daewoo advises him not to interfere in Mira's personal affairs. Even so, Mori still feels that Mira doesn't look happy, and Daewoo notices it too, though he still chooses not to get involved. The wedding day arrives. From a distance, the uncle watches his niece sorrowfully. He knows that Mira has sacrificed her youth to preserve the moonlight sword style. He realizes this marriage is solely to fulfill her father's dream. Mira's uncle tries to persuade Songjin to cancel the wedding. However, Mira reassures her uncle that she is happy because her dream is about to come true. Meanwhile, Mori arrives, feeling that something is wrong. Since he wasn't invited, he's barred from entering the wedding hall. Soon, the truth is revealed. Songjin is marrying Mira to get his hands on her sacred sword, which is said to be able to control gods. He is part of a cult that ordered him to use Mira to awaken the sacred sword's power. Daewoo arrives and blocks a punch from the security guards, then shoves them aside so Mori can enter the hall. Songjin is furious and draws his sword. However, Daewoo blocks him and tells Mori to talk to Mira. Mori insists that a dream means nothing if not fought for with one's own hands. Mira, having fought so hard, shouldn't give up so easily. Mira slaps Mori with the flowers she's holding. She is angry with him, feeling he knows nothing about her life. But her uncle steps in, taking a blow meant for her. He says that Mira's father would never have wanted this. He just wanted Mira to be happy, to love sincerely, and to live life as she wishes. Hearing that, Mira remembers her father's message, that using her own technique means living life on her own terms. She cries and apologizes, saying she can't go through with the wedding. She chooses to achieve her dream her own way. Songjin laughs angrily and unleashes his charyok. Without hesitation, he destroys the building with a single slash. Mira is wounded in her stomach. However, with courage and strong determination, she manages to defeat Sangjin, even without using a sword. Mira finally becomes herself again. Although her wooden sword was stolen by Sangjin, she doesn't chase him, because her father's determination and spirits are now embedded within her. That night, Daewi's friend's condition worsens and becomes critical. This causes Daewi to lose focus at his job. A student from the same school comes and mocks Sungtae's near-death condition. The taunt is so outrageous that Daewi becomes enraged and lands a heavy punch on him. That frustration also makes Daewi lose control. In the tournament, he defeats Mira mercilessly. This makes Mori realize that something is different about Daewi. After the match against Mira, Daewi throws up. His body seems to be reacting to the trauma of having hurt Mira, compounded by the guilt over his friend's critical condition. Meanwhile, Mori is fighting against Byeon Jae. From the start of the match, Mori gives Jae no chance to attack. The fight ends quickly, and Mori emerges as the winner. He looks very fired up. His goal is singular: to defeat Daewi. After the match, Mori visits Mira in the infirmary. Thanks to the nanomachine treatments, all of Mira's wounds have healed. However, Mori looks gloomy. Mira advises him that he can't defeat anyone if he's still carrying a mental burden. She accepts her defeat gracefully, and because she feels she's not strong enough to beat Daewi yet, Mori doesn't need to worry about her. Even so, Mira still doesn't understand what made Daewi change like that. Daewi himself hasn't told them about his friend who is now critical. The time for the fight between Mori and Daewi arrives. From behind the stage, Park Moo-jin watches them calmly, as if making a bet. Mori, with his taekwondo technique, unleashes fast and dynamic kicks. His movements are light, strong, and agile, whereas Daewi, with his karate style, relies on powerful punches and incredible endurance. He adds a knee strike to Mori's head, creating a solid combination of offense and defense. Their fight is evenly matched. Neither side is willing to back down. In the midst of the fierce battle, Commissioner P receives a phone call and suddenly looks serious. Meanwhile, Mori and Daewi continue to trade blows and kicks without holding back. Mori is disappointed in Daewi for what he did to Mira. He then unleashes his signature move, 3 consecutive kicks capable of shattering an opponent's defense. But Daewi blocks him with his 4 Guardian Gods technique. At the same time, Mira, now recovered, is about to go home with her family. When she sees the nanomachine watch on her wrist, she realizes someone else is using that technology. Her curiosity leads her to the ICU, where she finds Commissioner P and someone lying covered by a white sheet. When she sees the photo beside the bed, Mira realizes that person is Daewi's friend. Instantly, she understands why Daewi acted that way. Before Sungtae became critical, Daewi had begged Park Moo-jin to treat his friend using nanomachines. Moo-jin agreed on one condition: Daewi must win the regional preliminaries with a perfect victory. Just as Mori falls in the arena, Moo-jin arrives and informs Daewi that Sungtae has died. In a flashback, Han Daewi's past is revealed. He used to be a delinquent with many followers, while Sungtae was just an ordinary student. One day, when Daewi was cornered by another school's gang, Sungtae came to his rescue and helped him defeat them. Since then, Sungtae became the only friend who truly believed in him. As Daewi starts to falter and lose his spirit in the fight, Mira arrives with a megaphone, shouting that he's pathetic, then hands him a letter from Sungtae that she brought from the hospital. After reading the letter, Daewi slowly smiles and stands up again. He looks at Mori with new determination, the determination to trust his friends. The fight resumes. They trade punches and kicks, but now without hatred, only spirit and mutual understanding. This is no longer just a fight, but a testament between two friends who respect each other. Daewi finally realizes that Mori and Mira are people he can trust. But in the end, Mori uses Daewi's own Blue Dragon's kick and manages to knock him down. The match is won by Mori. As he lies there, Daewi thinks of Sungtae, but there is no regret on his face. He knows his friend fought as hard as he could. The atmosphere between them becomes warm again. This marks a new beginning for their friendship. Elsewhere in the tournament, an old man named Jin Taijin is surrounded by members of the cult for refusing their invitation. The cult has no choice but to attack him. Meanwhile, Mori, who is resting, suddenly feels anxious and wonders about his grandfather's whereabouts. Back in the tournament arena, new rules are announced. The fights will now be in a team format. Fighters from various cities will come to compete for the title of Korea's national champion. In a match clip, Mira faces Jae-hee and wins the duel. Thanks to her victory, Mira takes the third spot on the team, joining Mori and Daewoo as Seoul's representatives at the national level. Meanwhile, the commissioners are holding a secret meeting to find and analyze participants with the potential to be a ki. The term ki refers to a being that embodies part of a god's soul. Park Moo-jin explains that children their age hold various strong emotions: confidence, anger, even despair. And when those emotions turn into the strength to move forward, their ki will awaken. In the meeting, Commissioner R reports that Nox has started to move behind the scenes. Nox is a secret organization resembling a cult, which is also searching for the ki. However, their goals conflict with the National Assembly led by Park Moo-jin, putting the two sides in an adversarial position. With the situation becoming more dangerous, Moo-jin decides to summon members of the Six. One member of the Six, an old man named Bung-chen, arrives first to meet his former student. To confirm his identity, Bung-chen tests Moo-jin before they enter the building together. Bung-chen mentions that he met Jin Mori and intends to make him his student, but just to see the reaction of his old rival, Jin Taijin. Not long after, while Mori is training, Bung-chen suddenly appears and sticks an acupuncture needle into his slightly sprained ankle. Mori is startled, but the pain vanishes and his ankle heals instantly. Elsewhere, Jin Taijin faces Nox members alone. He is known to possess Charyok, and the Nox members try to match him. Their leader summons his power. A giant sword appears from a magic circle in the sky. The sword is aimed right at Jin Taijin's head. Meanwhile, Mira is shopping for groceries. When she meets Simbonsa, Mira is surprised to learn that Bongsa is blind. Yet, despite this, he understands Mira's moonlight sword style on a deeper level. Bongsa says that Mira hasn't been able to unleash her true power. He also reveals that a technique from the moonlight sword style is what caused him to lose his sight. After their conversation, Bongsa is approached by a mysterious rabbit clown who turns out to be an assassin from Nox. Meanwhile, Park Moo-jin meets with Han Daewoo to ask if he will continue in the tournament. Their previous agreement is considered void as his friend, the reason Daewoo was fighting, has now passed away. But Daewoo answers firmly that he still wants to fight, no longer for Sungtae, but for his friends. He feels indebted to them for guiding him out of the darkness and correcting his life's path. Before leaving, Daewoo asks about the mysterious power that seems to be controlling the tournament from behind the scenes. Park Moo-jin explains that it is Charyok, power borrowed from beings from another world whose existence is beyond human comprehension. Moo-jin also reveals that the true purpose of the God of High School tournament is to draw out the power of the gods and make it humanity's. The national tournament finally begins. However, this time the host is not Simbongsa. The reason is that he was murdered by Nox minions. Even Commissioner Q became a victim of the organization's attack. The tournament begins with a match between the Chungcheong region and the city of Seoul. The rules are simple. 3 fighters from each team will fight one-on-one in sequence. The first team to achieve 2 victories will be the winner. Mori asks to go first. Mira reminds him to be careful, as there might be Charyok users on the opposite team. Mori's first opponent is Nagi-dong. Confidently, Mori introduces his new technique, acupuncture. By piercing specific points on his body, he intends to drastically increase his attack power. However, instead of getting stronger, Mori can't move because he pressed the wrong points. Nagi-dong easily defeats him. The second match pits Dali against Jin Pumguang, a 38-year-old man who is still in high school. Pumguang uses a rough, brawling fighting style, while Dawi responds with his ultimate 4 Guardian Gods technique. Although he's hit hard, Jangmi, Pumguang's teammate, remains confident he won't give up. She remembers their past. Back then, Pungwang was often mocked for his age. He had entered high school, then dropped out and tried various jobs. But he failed at everything. He used to give up on himself. Now, to prove he's not the same person, Pungwang chooses to keep fighting. Cornered, Pungwang uses his Charyok, which manifests as the hammer of the thunder god, Thor. The power is immense. However, Dawi manages to withstand it and launch a counterattack. By completing the final stance of the four guardian gods, Dawi defeats Pungwang and wins the second match for Team Seoul. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Commissioner Q is facing one of the Nox assassins who killed Simbongsa. He is impaled by a large sword, and the assassin coldly admits to also slaughtering Bongsa's wife and child. Instantly, the assassin's hand is severed, and the sword impaling Q's body vanishes. With an incredibly intimidating aura, Q spins his scythe, causing the assassin to lose both his hands. As his life is about to end, two of his colleagues suddenly arrive, revealed to be official Nox envoys. They were sent to kill the commissioners. Axley dodges and unleashes her Charyok. Meanwhile, Saturn uses her 1,000 hands Charyok. She attacks Q from all directions. Soon after, Commissioner O arrives because Q's power-limiting bracelet has been removed. He intends to check the situation. Saturn then summons a giant cross that channels holy energy toward the enemy. She tries to devour Commissioner O with her Charyok, but she is defeated by O's Charyok, the dragon Changsik. The third match features Mira against Jangmi. This fight will determine who moves on to the next round. Both are sword experts, however, their fighting styles are very different. The battle is fierce until Jangmi's sword breaks. Even so, she still has one last power, her Charyok. The next round pits Seonga against Namgong. In that fight, Namgong attacks using his physical strength. However, Seonga avoids all his attacks and fells her opponent with just one kick. Meanwhile, in the audience, Mori, along with Mira and Dawi, watches the match intently. But instead of focusing on the fighter's abilities, Mori is fixated on the tiger image on Park Ilpyo's clothing, identical to the symbol on his grandfather's military uniform. Confidently, Ilpyo tells his opponent that he can't possibly win against him and suggests he just give up. But the man isn't intimidated. He mocks Ilpyo back and attacks with all his strength. Although each attack looks dangerous, Ilpyo manages to parry everything with ancient martial arts, then strikes with a quick slash, felling his opponent. That evening, Mira, Dawi, and Mori walk home together. When discussing the power shown by the participants, Mori says he doesn't need power like that. He just wants to become strong with his own power, not by borrowing it from outside. After parting with his friends, Mori is suddenly approached by Ilpyo with some drama. Ilpyo says he's a fan of Mori and wants to shake his hand. Mori responds politely, but suddenly Ilpyo pulls his hand and attacks Mori. Feeling threatened, Mori engages the attack and the two fight fiercely. The fight ends in a draw. After that, Ilpyo introduces himself properly and states his desire to have a real fight against Mori someday. Coincidentally, Mori has a question. He wants to know the meaning of the tiger logo on Ilpyo's jacket. Ilpyo explains that the symbol is a form of respect for Jin Tai-jin, Mori's grandfather. A long time ago, when Ilpyo was a child, Jin Tai-jin visited him. After his father's death, Jin Tai-jin gave him a book containing the secret techniques of Tachyon. He explained that before Ilpyo's grandfather died, he studied Tachyon and developed new techniques, which were then written in that book. Jin Tai-jin also told him that Ilpyo's grandfather was a very strong person. This motivated Ilpyo to become as strong as him. After telling the story, Ilpyo asks about Jin Tai-jin, but before Mori can answer, he is suddenly attacked by Jegal Tak. Ilpyo immediately blocks the attack, furious that Jegal involved someone else in his personal affairs. Fortunately, the conflict doesn't escalate, as Jegal quickly leaves. The next day, Mori uses his free time to exercise. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Commissioner Q protests to Mujin for, he believes, letting Simbongsa be killed by Nox. However, Mujin slams him down with his power. His arrival annoyed Mujin, who felt disrespected. A moment later, another commissioner explains that the person killed by Nox was just a decoy, while the real Simbongsa had been secured.
Q feels lucky he wasn't really killed, but despite feeling guilty, Q refuses to apologize to Mujin. As a consequence, his salary is cut for 9 months. At a different time, Mujin holds a meeting with the tournament organizers.
He warns them that sooner or later, Nox will come to destroy the god of high school. Since there's no more room for discussion, Mujin grants his members permission to release their power limits and destroy the enemy with all their might. He also stresses the importance of obtaining the key to fight against the power of the gods. That evening, Mori gathers again with his two friends. They eat together and have fun, making Mori remember the advice and memories of his grandfather. When Mori was little, he often traveled with his grandfather. Little Mori wanted to settle down in one place, but they couldn't because many bad people were after his grandfather. In the present, Mori receives a photo of his grandfather being held captive. Seeing the photo, he immediately goes to find him. Meanwhile, at the arena, the tournament has entered the quarterfinals. Today, Team Seoul will fight Team Jeju. This is Team Jeju's first match. They got lucky in the draw, allowing them to advance directly to this round. Moments before the match begins, Mira and Dawi are worried because Mori hasn't arrived. Since time is up, they are forced to start the match without him. According to the rules, if Mori doesn't arrive before the second match begins, Team Seoul will be disqualified. The first match pits Lee Marin from Team Jeju against Mira from Team Seoul. Upon entering the arena, Marin wears a mysterious robe. As soon as the match starts, he removes his robe and fights naked, disgusting the audience and even Mira herself. Meanwhile, Mori arrives at an old warehouse. There, he finds his grandfather lying bound. At the same time, Mira and Marin are trading blows. Marin briefly locks Mira from behind, but Mira manages to escape because her body is slippery from sunscreen. The two fight with their respective sword styles. At first, the fight is even, but Marin slowly gains the upper hand thanks to his physical strength and his much stronger sword. Marin calls his sword a national treasure, a very strong sword capable of destroying an opponent's weapon and even returning to its owner's hand. This makes it impossible for Mira to take it. Meanwhile, Mori tries to untie his grandfather, but suddenly Jin Taijin acts strangely. His body explodes, destroying the building. A moment later, a mysterious man appears saying the weak team has been cleaned up. But the explosion isn't enough to kill Mori. He is still able to stand and fight the man who trapped him. In the arena, Mira loses her sword and is forced to fight using swordless techniques. She keeps dodging while enduring heavy injuries. Meanwhile, Dawi is challenged to a fight by a girl from Team Chungcheong. However, their fight stops when the girl is called away by her teammate. The enemy Mori is facing turns out to be Fia Long, with the ability to multiply and attack from various directions at once. As Mori falls to the floor below, he discovers the bodies of the real Team Jeju members. He then realizes that these attackers had killed and disguised themselves as Team Jeju to infiltrate the tournament. Knowing this, Mori is furious. He uses a special technique that numbs his body to pain for 1 hour. Meanwhile, Mira is overwhelmed. Her body is covered in wounds from Marin's relentless attacks. Even so, she doesn't give up and continues to believe that Mori will come. On the verge of fainting, Mira enters her subconscious and meets a reflection of herself. There, she awakens her Chariyak, allowing her to borrow a god's power. With this new strength, Mira manages to reclaim her opponent's sword and launch a deadly counterattack. Soon after, Mori arrives just in time. After defeating Fia Long, he rushes to the arena and continues the match. Facing the infiltrators disguised as Team Jeju, Mori uses the Blue Dragon Kick technique, the same technique he used to defeat Fia Long. In the past, Ilpyo was asked by Sengyeon why he fought so hard to become strong. Ilpyo replied that he had made a promise to someone. Right after he said that, Sengyeon was suddenly attacked by Jaegultek. Unwilling to accept this, Ilpyo took revenge and beat Jaegultek until he couldn't move. Soon after, Ilpyo received an invitation to the tournament. In the present, the tournament organizers finally find out that the participants from Team Jeju were replaced by another party. However, the match results stand. The Mori has the right to advance to the semifinals. Daewoo then asks who the mastermind behind the incident was, and Mujin answers that it was all done by Nox. Furthermore, Jaegultek was also involved, having cooperated with them to obtain the key. Meanwhile, in the arena, Team Seoul is set to fight Team Jola South. Daewoo goes first against Park Senga. Team Jola South's strategy is to launch the first strike to unbalance the opponent. As Daewoo starts to struggle, Senga seizes the opportunity and attacks with full force. While taking the hits, Daewoo remembers his conversation with Mori earlier. At that time, Mori said he would definitely become the champion to get clues about his grandfather's whereabouts. Remembering his friend's determination, Daewoo gets back up and launches a counterattack against Senga. As a fellow martial artist, Senga is determined to fight to the end. However, Daewoo gains the upper hand and emerges victorious. After the match, Daewoo tells Mori that it's not just him who will win, but all three of them will become champions together as a team. This reignites Mori's spirit. Elsewhere, Sang Mandok, a bishop from the Nox cult, confronts Mujin. Along with his followers, they gather to perform a summoning ritual. The next match pits Jin Mori against Part Ilpyo. Before the fight, Ilpyo warns that Mori's taekwondo can't win against him, but Mori doesn't care and charges forward with full confidence. The two trade fierce punches and kicks. Although it seems even, Ilpyo has a slight edge because he understands Mori's weaknesses. According to Ilpyo, Mori has 3 weaknesses. 1. Weakness in close combat. 2. His stance is easy to read. 3. His techniques put too much strain on his own body. Meanwhile, outside the arena, Mujin and his allies are holding off a massive attack from the Nox cult. Although the power is called God's punishment, the attack is stopped by one of the members of the 6. Mujin blocks the Sword of God summoned by Nox, while Zhao Chen tries to destroy it using various national treasures. After learning his weaknesses, Mori starts finding ways to overcome them. In a short time, he finds a solution and knocks Ilpyo down. At the same time, the 6 also manage to stop Nox's attack. However, the situation suddenly changes. Park Ilpyo unites and immense power begins to flow through his body. It seems Ilpyo has awakened the key. The awakening of the 9-tailed fox Charyok makes everyone tremble. Even Mujin and Mandok can feel the awakening of the key's power, the 9-tailed fox. Mori tries to assess his opponent's strength calmly, but not a single one of his blows can harm Ilpyo. When Ilpyo strikes back, Mori receives a barrage of kicks, knocking him down and making it difficult to move. Even so, Mori refuses to give up. He launches his blue dragon kick, but the attack is ineffective. Ilpyo seems to be in pain, but it doesn't diminish his fighting ability. He continues to attack Mori with full power. In the midst of the fierce battle, Mori realizes Charyok isn't just power borrowed from outside, but also comes from his own body and mind. With this new realization, Mori no longer holds back. He summons his own Charyok, which blocks all attacks, and manifests a staff and spiritual hands, ultimately defeating Ilpyo with just one attack. Mori wins the match. However, he doesn't remember what actually happened to him. Manduk questions the spirit power that just appeared, but Mujin just smiles without giving an explanation. Feeling he's not aligned with Mujin's thinking, Manduk leaves abruptly. After thwarting Nox's plan, Mujin orders his colleagues to remain on high alert at their designated points. He suspects Nox still has another plan. After his defeat, Ilpyo, who fainted, is rushed to the hospital. Once his condition improves, Mori comes to visit. Mori looks very healthy. However, Ilpyo insists he is fitter because he followed the nurse's advice. When Mori is asked if he used Charyok in the match, he replies, "I don't know," just like the confusion Ilpyo himself felt. Because their fight drained so much energy, Senga advises Mori and Ilpyo to rest. Mori agrees, but he still wants to talk to Ilpyo about his grandfather. He admits he doesn't know where his grandfather is and is determined to become the champion to get information on him. Ilpyo warns that Mori's final opponent is extremely strong, but he believes Mori can win. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a patient named John Jugok is exposed to the spirit's power and accidentally meets Jaegul-taek. Jugok attacks blindly.
When a staff member tries to restrain him, Jaegul-taek seizes the opportunity to counterattack. Ilpyo and his colleagues then join the battle. Before John Jugo can become more monstrous, Jaegul-taek manages to finish him off. Unfortunately, in the process, Ilpyo's friends lose their arms and legs. The key is now right before them. To get it, Mandok summons a large portal that unleashes an army of spirits and a giant Buddha statue. Ilpyo, filled with rage, awakens his Charyok to face Jaegal-taik. Meanwhile, Jaegal-taik tries to defeat him to seize the key embedded inside Ilpio's body. A fierce battle breaks out. Jaegal-taik summons toothed creatures from his chariot, then deploys those monsters to surround Ilpio. Elsewhere, Mujin and his allies struggle to hold back the army of spirits summoned by Mandok. Realizing the situation is descending into chaos, Mujin finally declares the god of high school tournament officially over. Ilpio continues to rain blows on Jaegal-taik, but instead of giving up, Jaegal just smiles and says that he is not a loser. He then summons his chariot Megalodon and forcibly extracts the key from his body. Once the key is loose, everyone scrambles for it. As the key falls into Mandok's hands, Mori immediately jumps and kicks him, snatching the key before it can be secured. Seeing the chaos enveloping Korea, the leaders from the United States finally intervene. Under the pretext of protecting the world, they launch nuclear-armed missiles without warning. Mujin, who is overwhelmed, receives a report that dozens of missiles have been launched from the American continent. Realizing the immense danger, Mujin uses his power to move everyone to a safer place. All tournament participants are thrown onto a remote island. There, Mori finds Ilpio severely injured. With his skills, Mori stops Ilpio's bleeding. When Mori asks if this was all Jaegal-taik's doing, Sengyeon, who is beside them, answers that Jaegal is a dangerous figure, someone who has always been watching Ilpio and Mori. Soon after, Ilpio regains consciousness. When Mori asks about the key, Ilpio admits he doesn't know why it was inside his body, but he could feel its immense power. Because of that, Ilpio entrusts the key to Mori, asking him not to let it fall into Jaegal-taik's hands. Meanwhile, the chaos in Seoul continues. Residents try to save themselves while others continue to fight the threats that keep coming. As the missiles get closer, one of the members of the Six uses his power to move everyone to safety. He even manages to redirect the missiles and use them as weapons to destroy the giant statue summoned by Mandok. However, the nuclear explosion still occurs. In an instant, most of Seoul is destroyed. Amidst the destruction, Jaegal-taik is still hunting the key. He slaughters anyone who dares to stand in his way. When he finally realizes that the key is held by Mori, Jaegal orders him to hand it over. But Mori refuses, determined to protect the key from falling into Jaegal's hands. Unfortunately, Mori's strength isn't enough to match Jaegal. The key is seized and absorbed by Jaegal-taik, giving him power that can surpass the gods. His body transforms from a human form into a winged baby, then grows into a monstrous entity with extraordinary power. The commissioners watch the godlike creature's descent from a distance. Jaegal, having absorbed the key's power, wants to devour everything and reduce it to nothingness. Mori remembers flashes of his past, but Jaegal quickly attacks Mira. Dawi catches Mira's thrown body and dodges the next attack. Even Mira's light sword attack is blocked by Jaegal with just one finger. Dawi and Mori are unable to get close. Mori swears he will not forgive the person who hurt his friends. He manages to break free from Jaegal's telekinetic grip and stabs his own chest using acupuncture. With full determination, Mori charges forward and continues to fight, even though his body is nearly destroyed. Dawi and Mira work together to pressure Jaegal, while Mori launches an ultimate attack. But that power cannot harm Jaegal, who has swallowed the key. They are forced to retreat, but a group of creatures sent by Jaegal blocks their exit. As the situation grows more desperate, Jaegal launches an arrow of light toward Mori. Dawi blocks the attack with his own body and yells for Mori and Mira to run. Dawi's sacrifice triggers Mori's memories, becoming clearer, of himself fighting alone against the godlike entity with his staff. Suddenly, a large pillar falls from the sky. Mandok, who understands much about the key, immediately recognizes Mori as the key's guardian, Sun Wukong. Mori summons his legendary staff, a giant staff that shrinks when he commands it. The fight resumes. Now, Mori can match Jaegal's speed. Despite being thrown and nearly eaten by Jaegal's summoned creature, Mori uses his staff's power, which can extend, to defeat the creatures one by one. Their fight is evenly matched. When Jaegal
reaches his top speed, he manages to pin Mori to the ground. But Mori turns the tables. His staff presses against Jaegal's stomach and extends, creating a powerful gust of wind that overwhelms Jaegal. Mori rains blows on him. The final punch weakens Jaegal's power. Mori summons the Kinto-un flying nimbus and strikes Jaegal with lightning repeatedly. Seeing this, Mujin realizes Mori isn't a Charyokuser, but a god himself. After the fight, Mori explains his situation to Mira and Dawi. However, his headband suddenly tightens, causing him pain. Meanwhile, Jaegal, nearly dead, refuses to give up. His obsession with obtaining Mori's power makes his body mutate, creating many long arms to attack him. Mori tries to summon his staff and Cloud, but nothing responds. As he's cornered, Ilpio arrives, followed by Mira and Dawi.
The four unite their strength and fight together against Jaegal, who is now like a mad god. Finally, Mori launches a finishing blow with the Blue Dragon kick. At the same time, Jaegal uses his last strength to freeze himself. Mori's kick shatters Jaegal's body to pieces. Jaegal's body begins to erode, and when Ilpio tries to grab his hand, Jaegal refuses to be saved. His body shatters into fragments of light. That light turns into an orb, which is absorbed by Ilpio. Soon, a woman named Kim Eun-yeo appears. She is one of the strongest members of the Six. Because Team Mori won the tournament, Eun-yeo offers to grant one of their wishes. Unconsciously, Mori wants to find his grandfather, but when he sees his friend's condition, he reconsiders his wish. Mira and Dawi support whatever Mori decides, but Mori chooses not to be selfish. He asks for everyone who was injured to be returned to their original state. Eun-yeo grants the wish and then informs him that Mori's grandfather is still alive, though very weak. Mori's headband falls off, along with the relief in his heart. After 3 months of unconsciousness, Mori begins a new journey to release all his memories and find his grandfather once again.